Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? When Derek Carr was introduced on Saturday in New Orleans, he was asked if the Saints' defense was a part of the reason why he ultimately chose to play in New Orleans, meaning he has never really had a really good defense with the Raiders, and this is a nice complementary piece to what he might be able to do offensively.
You know, one thing for me when making this decision, all you can do is, look at past resumes. I knew once you sign with the team, none of the stats or anything in the past matter. Right now, we don't have any rankings and we don't have any wins, And so the most important thing to me was the character of the men in the room. Not really the ranking and that kind of thing, but the character. And, when I talk to the defensive guys here, and I've known a lot of them for a lot of years, but they're grown men. They know how to handle success. They know how to handle hard times. And they compete at everything that they do. And this past year, when y'all beat our faces in, here at the Superdome, you could feel the physicality that they played with. You could feel the energy, the brotherhood. You could feel those things. And I was so pissed after the game, excuse my language, but, I was like, wow, what an opportunity it is to make that one of my choices now.
That's glowing praise, and the Saints shut out the Raiders in the Dome, by the way. I don't know if that's a better reflection on the Saints' defense or a poor reflection on Carr and the Raiders, but anyway. I'm curious if Derek Carr would say the same given the exodus defensively. Now, there are still some great veterans there. Cam Jordan is still there. Demario Davis, the heart and soul of your defense. Tyrann Mathieu, Marcus May. Obviously, your cornerback room, I think, is young and talented, and Lattimore and Adebo and Taylor. There's a lot to like. The defensive front has some major questions now. They did before. The Saints were 24th in the NFL in rush defense a year ago. But now you've seen David Onyemata go to Atlanta. Shai Tuttle go to Carolina. We've learned Marcus Davenport is headed to Minnesota on a one-year deal. And Kaden Ellis, that might be the one that stings the most, is headed to Atlanta on a 3-year, $21.5 million contract with $11 million in guarantees. A lot of people have asked about Marcus Davenport and said, hey, is he the biggest bust in Saints history? Absolutely not. In asking that question, it is ignoring the first 40 years of Saints franchise history. Jonathan Sullivan was a bigger bust. Sean Knight was a first-round pick, I believe the 11th pick overall, and played 1 year in New Orleans. Played 3 years total in the year. You had a guy that was the 11th overall pick, played 1 year in New Orleans. Then went to Denver and played 1 other year, I think, in Arizona, and was done. So some people will ask about Ricky and Reggie. Now, I think they get an unfair rap. It was basically, both were very good, very productive players. There was just enormous expectation given where they were taken in the draft. Ricky, what the Saints gave up to get him first overall, and then, or not first overall, but in the top 10, and then Reggie going 2 overall. But both were sensationally productive players, just, given the expectation is why people would ask that question. Davenport, when he was on the field prior to this year, was a productive player. The problem was getting him on the field. And then this year, coincidentally, he was on the field, played 15 games, which was a career high, but had a career low in productivity, only a half a sack on the season. So I don't think this is a surprise that Davenport is leaving New Orleans. It is a disappointment considering what you gave up to get him. Back in 2018, remember, you moved up 13 spots. You traded with Green Bay. You went up 13 spots to select Davenport. And you gave up a 5th-round pick that year and your 2019 first-round pick. Now, that ended up being the 30th pick overall, and the Packers traded it to the Giants, and the Giants ended up taking DeAndre Baker with that pick. So make of that what you will, but you did give up a 1 and a 5 to move up 13 spots to take a player who's most known in his time in New Orleans for being injury-prone. When he was on the field and when he was active, he was very good by any measure. But he wasn't on the field consistently, and then this year he was, and his productivity vanished, which is why nobody spent a lot of money on him. The odd thing for me anyway, is when I look at the Saints' approach right now in free agency, I think we all agree, we've talked about it a bunch, the approach has been win now. They're not taking the long tail view. That's why they're not necessarily looking at a quarterback early in the draft, clearly as evidenced by signing Carr. When you look at allowing guys like David Onyemata to leave, Tuttle to leave, Kaden Ellis signed with Atlanta. They essentially said, we're not investing long-term in players. We'll bring Michael Thomas back on a one-year incentive-laden deal. Bring Jameis Winston back on a one-year deal. But you let Davenport walk? That's the interesting part to me, is if Davenport had gotten what some market value had projected, near $20 million for him, which I understand sounds absurd coming off the year he had, but he's still an edge rusher in the NFL and a young player. If he had gotten that, I could have understood. To let him walk when he essentially took a one-year kind of prove-it deal in Minnesota is a little bit odd. And so now you've seen Onyemata, Ellis, Tuttle all walk in free agency along with Davenport as well. Ellis is the one that is maybe the biggest gut punch, because that's a guy who you identified the player. Remember, Kaden Ellis was a 7th-round pick out of Idaho. And it's rare that you hit on players in round 7 or an undrafted free agency. But this was a guy that you identified, you drafted, you developed. He was a productive special teamer. And then this year, when you had an injury to Pete Werner, Ellis is the guy that stepped in and had a career year. Sacks, tackles for loss, all of it. And presumably, you would have thought, man, when you're losing so much on that front 7 of your defense, and you know Demario Davis is aging, this is a guy you want to hang around your team for another 3-4 years. And you lose him to your division rival. And I get it. Terry Fontenot's the GM, was with the Saints when they identified and drafted Kaden Ellis. Ryan Nielsen is the new defensive coordinator there, who was the co-DC in New Orleans this past year, knows the player. So I understand the connection there. But it is disappointing to basically do all of the legwork, identifying, developing the player, and then as he's reaching his prime, you lose him to a rival. Linebacker is one that the Saints are going to have to address depth. Demario Davis is magnificent. Pete Werner, when he's healthy, has been a really good player. But with Kaden Ellis leaving, you are spectacularly thin behind them. Andrew Dowell is there. Chase Hansen is there. Zach Bond's in the final year of his rookie deal. Will he finally materialize? I doubt it. No reason to believe he will. But you're going to have to do something to address your depth at linebacker. You know who your starters are. Provided they're healthy, Davis, Werner, those are your guys. Where's your depth? That's what you need to address. Ellis would have been an awesome piece to be that third linebacker and a guy that presumably would be the guy would step in to be a starter when Demario Davis's time in New Orleans comes to an end. But that's no longer an option. Instead of having him play for you and help you win games, you're going to have to play against him twice a year now as he's headed to Atlanta. So the Saints, that front 7 continues to be remade. And with free agency beginning on Wednesday and then subsequently the draft, you better believe that is going to be a major focus for this team. I feel great about the Saints secondary. I really do. I love the talent and the pieces. And I understand Tyrann Mathieu aging and won't be there forever, but I really like the Saints secondary. And there are pieces in that defensive front that are still very good protective players. You've got to add numbers and depth and get some youth in that front 7. That's going to be a major focus in free agency and coming up in the draft. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.